So I wonder what it's like being the Queen. Well, everywhere she goes, it's said that she must think that everywhere smells of fresh paint, as everywhere's all being painted as she comes. But can you imagine what it's like being the Queen? Everywhere you go, crowds gather. If the Queen was coming here this morning, the high street would be full, wouldn't it? There would be people packed there, many people wanting to give her gifts, particularly of flowers, and cheering her as she went past. And I also wonder if she's ever had to open a door in her life. And because I'm sure there are people that are always there ahead of her, welcoming her, opening the door for her, ushering her in. Well, in our reading, we heard about a royal procession of Jesus entering into Jerusalem. And there are lots of things that give us those clues that it was a royal procession. It was quite traditional in this Jesus time that if a celebrity, an important person was coming to a town, that the people would go out and greet them and cheer. And particularly if they were a conquering king, if they had won a victory, either somewhere else or were coming in to conquer, then the crowds would go out and cheer them as they came in. That it was traditional, there would be an entrance procession to mark the fact that the new ruler, the new king, was coming in. And then the fact that they threw the cloaks down in front of Jesus. The link that I hadn't made until I read about it this week. There's in the second book of Kings, which gives the history of the Jewish people and of what happened with their kings. That there was an event when Jehu was elected as king to take over from a king that had been doing a really bad job of being a king, and his wife was Jezebel. You might have heard of her. So they did a really bad job of ruling, and Jehu was appointed as the new king. And as he came into Jerusalem, they took their cloaks and put them down on the floor in front of them. So that must have been in the mind of the crowds as they welcomed Jesus and threw their cloaks down, that they were welcoming in the new king who was to take over from those that were doing a not so good job. And then the fact that they cut down the palms and waved the branches and put those down in front of Jesus, again, that looks back to an event a few hundred years before when there'd been a rising to support the Maccabeus as king. And again, people cut palms and waved them as he came in to take over as king. And then the hymn that they sang, the hymn that we've heard quoted, it comes from Psalm 118, Hosanna to the Son of David. That's a royal acclamation. They sung that hymn. They saw Jesus as the coming king. They had been looking forward, the people had been looking forward for years and years to the promised king who would come, who would combine both the role of king and priest, who would be both king and high priest together, and to take away for once and for all the sins of the people, to be the ruler, the Messiah that would bring in God's kingdom. It has been prophesied, and particularly by Zechariah, who we heard, it was quoted. So this is what they were looking for. They were looking for that king that was going to come and rule them in a new way, God's ruler, to get rid of the Romans who were oppressing them. They were looking for this king who would also be their high priest. And as Jesus came in, I think many of them must have thought, this is it. Here he comes. Here comes our king. And they hailed him as he came in. But there's one detail in the story that doesn't quite fit with this triumphal new ruler, and that's the donkey. Don't we love the donkey in this story? I noticed someone earlier with donkey ears. I don't know if they're still around. Are you still here with her donkey ears? This is your starry moment. There we go. Look, we've got a little donkey. Jesus came riding a donkey. A donkey is just an ordinary working beast. A conquering ruler would not come in riding a donkey. They would have come in on a powerful war horse. They would have come in displaying their power. But Jesus instead comes on a donkey. And this donkey, the fact that he comes riding the donkey, the humble working beast, indicates that there's something different about God's kingdom. There's something different about the kingdom that Jesus is bringing in. And this is what, of course, leads to the clash that ends up at the end of the week with Jesus being crucified, that the expectations that Jesus is going to come in and overthrow the Romans and be this mighty victorious king, and yet he doesn't come and do that. He comes and shows a different way, because Jesus' kingdom is different. In the chapters immediately before this event and afterwards, if you read them, you will see pictures and images and talk of what Jesus' kingdom is like. It's a topsy-turvy kingdom where the poor, the marginalised, are upheld. It's a kingdom that welcomes in the prostitutes and the tax collectors and criticises the Pharisees, the religious hierarchy. It's a kingdom that is all about grace, what's sometimes referred to as the scandal of grace. Jesus tells the parable about the workers in the vineyard, and the workers at the end of the day are given exactly the same wage as those who've been working all day. Grace is something that turns around what we might expect. It's a kingdom that's all about forgiveness, forgiving one another and knowing that we are forgiven by God. It's a kingdom that upholds children as an example to us all of the way we should relate to God. It's a kingdom that is all about service and a kingdom that is about sacrifice, as of course we see on the cross. Because it's not to a royal throne that Jesus comes, but it's to the cross. This shows us what God's kingdom is like. It shows us the kingdom that Jesus calls us to be building with him, to welcome in. As we welcome him as our king, we also welcome in his kingdom. And he calls us to work with him to build that kingdom. So as we think about that donkey, let's let the donkey be our inspiration today. Think about the story of that donkey who was minding her own business with her colt, tied up somewhere, perhaps having a rest from a heavy working day. And then 2 disciples come and lead her away. And Jesus, maybe a stranger, maybe known to her, sits on her back. And the crowds are shouting and cheering as they enter Jerusalem. She has the privilege and joy of carrying Jesus on her back, carrying Jesus into that city, into the place where he will fulfill the scriptures, will fulfill the promises, and will take away the sin of all people once and for all. You probably know the tradition that on the back of a donkey there is a mark that, if you look at it from above, looks like the cross. It goes the line that goes along their back and across their shoulders. And it's a tradition that mark is there because the donkey carried Jesus into Jerusalem on that day. So the donkey continues to carry that mark of the cross to remember that they carried Jesus. Remember that the donkey is just an ordinary working animal, and yet she is the one who carries the king. So perhaps for us, that is an inspiration, that we might think of ourselves as just ordinary people. We say it in our team vision statement, that we are ordinary people. And we are ordinary people, but we carry with us, we bring with us wherever we go, Jesus, who is the King. Jesus, who is the one who brings in his kingdom. We are called to be ordinary people, but ordinary people who carry Jesus wherever we go. Perhaps think this week, wherever you go, that you are privileged to be carrying Jesus with you. That together with him we work to bring in his kingdom that is about grace and forgiveness and mercy and love and service and sacrifice. We can do those things, we can show those things wherever we are. One of the things as a team we want to encourage people to do is to see every aspect of your life as being part of your service to God, every aspect of your life as being an opportunity to live out God's kingdom. I don't know what that means for you. You all have very different situations, whether it's work, families, community, school, college, whatever place you you find yourself, voluntary work. There are so many things that wherever you are, you have that opportunity to bring God into it simply by serving others, by showing love and joy. It doesn't always mean having to, sometimes there'll be the opportunity, but it doesn't always mean talking about your faith directly. It might just be by the way that you live your life. It's been interesting this week to, just a slight aside, but I think it's worth thinking about, perhaps something to talk about later. There's been a lot in the news about the nurse who was sacked for her job because she overstepped the mark in terms of offering to pray for people and telling people that they needed to be prayed for. I think it's an interesting one. I don't know if you followed the story. Personally, I worked in the health service and social services for 20 years, and my understanding is it was always not appropriate to talk about my faith unless someone talked to me about theirs, and then I would talk about it. I don't think that serving God necessarily means we always need to be being that direct. That was you could always offer to ask someone if they would like the chaplain to come and visit them if you felt that was appropriate. It isn't always about being in your face with people about our faith. It's about living out the life in the service that we do, and actually understanding that caring for other people or making the world a better place in some way through what we do, whether it's serving people with a smile at the checkout or whether it's being able to listen to a colleague who's having a difficult day. All those things are about building the kingdom, as well as the opportunities we sometimes get to talk about God directly. So I want to encourage you this week, as we go from here, to think about the fact that you carry Jesus with you. You've all been given a palm cross. Some people often like to keep their palm cross perhaps in the car or somewhere like that. So it might be a good thing to think about, where could you put that cross that would remind you of your service to God, of your service to Jesus the King. Perhaps in your hallway as you go in and out of your house, perhaps in your car, perhaps if it's appropriate on your desk. Somewhere that you can keep it that will remind you that you are serving Jesus in whatever you're doing, not just when you come to church on a Sunday. There are lots of ways that we can build God's kingdom with him. And we remember that to serve God is a route of sacrifice. It led Jesus to the cross, and we walk with him, and at times it will be a time of sacrifice. But also we know that he is with us, strengthening us and bringing his kingdom. One of the ways that we can help build God's kingdom is with particular acts of service and mission. And we're going to hear in a minute about Romania. Ruth, are you going to come and share something? We're going to hear about Romania and the mission trip that they went on last year that's happening again as an example of how you can build your God's kingdom. Ruth, come and talk to us. Yeah, should be one.
Just very briefly, we're going to show a video that we made of our trip to Romania last year, the mission trip to work with the Smiles Foundation. Many of you know about this already. We are organising another trip this year in October, and we would love more people to join us on that trip. So we just wanted to see, if you didn't get the chance the last time, to have a look, to see what the service was all about there and what it will be again this year. Serving people who are very poor, in difficult situations, the elderly as well as children. It's an amazing thing to do, to go out to another country, be in a different community, in a different culture, but all the time serving God in this way. So enjoy. I hope you will enjoy the video. And if you're interested in going on this year's trip, which takes place in October, do come and see me afterwards, or you can speak to Anna Clark as well.